And here we are with Dan Cooper. Dan, thanks for being on the show. How are you?
Things are great. Thanks for having me.
You're just back from a trip that we were talking about offline. We can maybe bring that up a little bit later. But first, just like we do for all the guests, I want to give you a chance to describe your time on active duty in your own words. Where'd you serve? What'd you do?
So I joined in 2000. I was an infantry guy. My first duty station was the Old Guard, which is super interesting for a lot of reasons. There's it's a small group that goes there, but it's DC, and I got onto the first presidential marching platoon, which just means that I did a certain type of mission when we were there. I didn't do a lot of funerals. We did stuff for former dignitaries and presidents when they come visit, whether it's at the Pentagon or the White House or two and then on soldier. So it was very interesting for me as a kid. I'm 20 years old and I'm seeing world leaders in front of me. So just very interesting. Guys you see on CNN, like I watch CNN, but that I would have seen on CNN if I watched that stuff. And so a cool experience. Then, so I was there 2000 through 2003. And the way that the Old Guard works as far as rotations for the contingency mission for the Old Guard, which is security of DC if things were to happen, they do, it's called IRC-1, where one of the companies within the regiment are on call. And we were on call during 9/11. So my company, we were actually doing riot training that morning because the International Monetary Fund was supposed to have a convention and there was credible threats. So we're doing this riot training. And that's when the first plane hit. Our sergeant major of the regiment comes down and tells us plane hit one of the World Trade Center buildings, and more to follow, I guess. There was no real understanding what was going on. And then we actually heard the plane hit the Pentagon. It sounded kind of like a dump truck hitting a building, like that, just a big thud, because Pentagon was.
Dan, for those that don't know, I have familiarity with the DC geography, but for those that don't know, maybe you could just describe where the Old Guard is stationed and how it was possible that you heard that.
So the Old Guard it butts up against Arlington Cemetery. So you've got Fort Myer, which is where I was, Arlington Cemetery, some highways, and then the Pentagon. So it bird's eye view, it's maybe a half mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile from the actual Pentagon. So yeah, the first day we are doing, we're recording off hallways for people who wanted, say they had an office down in the damaged area, they wanted to go get their purse or documents or whatever they wanted to get. So it's kind of funny, PFCs telling generals they can't go to their office is kind of neat. Then from the second day on, we were doing battery recovery and sifting through rubble. It was kind of an interesting situation where the first day, we're in BDUs and nothing else. And then the next day they've got respirators on us. Then the third day they've got us in full hazmat suits. It makes you wonder what we were exposed to for the first 2 days. And that was the Old Guard. So I did that. Then I left active duty in 2003 just to finish undergrad. I went to Florida State for undergrad and kind of missed it. So I joined the reserves and I deployed out of the reserves. I was in a drill sergeant unit, and funny enough, one of the reasons I chose that unit is because it was a non-deployable unit. But they did individual pulls out of that unit to go onto transition teams. If you don't know what a transition team is, it's kind of it's an interesting situation. It's a way to augment what the Army Special Forces does. So it's a foreign army training mission, but because Special Forces was drawn so thin during that time, this is 2006 is when I left. They needed to augment it with regular dudes that weren't SF guys, and so that was me and 10 other guys on my team.
So just to set the clock here, you started that in 2003. So that was we were the Iraq invasion was 2003, right?
Yes. So I didn't go 2003 though. So I was Old Guard 2002 2003. Finished undergrad for 2 more years. I did 2 years of undergrad before I went in the Army. So I left for Iraq in 2006. So my time there was, I think I got there the end of September through the end of September 2007. So that was my time frame. If you remember, they had like a they had a ceasefire that was kind of hilarious. That was during that time. Jay Shalmeti was a big deal at that time.
So I'm trying to connect. I thought I heard the word non-deployable unit.
Yeah.
What happened there?
The unit didn't deploy, so they were right. Yeah. It's a drill sergeant unit, and their mission is go train troops at in my case Fort Jackson was where we did our drill sergeant duties. So they didn't deploy the unit; they did individual draws out of the unit. So if you had a certain skill set that they required for these teams, they would pull you out. And that was why one of the reasons it was kind of weird is that you get to Fort Riley, Kansas, is where we did our pre-deployment train up. You don't know any of the guys you're with. It's kind of weird deploying with a bunch of dudes that you just met. But that was the case. And so that was 2006 and 7. Honestly, I thought that was a great time. A lot of people, I don't know, a lot of people's ideas of their deployments are very different. And one of the things that I found on deployment that was kind of wonderful, I felt like I had Buddha mind while I was there. I felt like I just had a lot of headspace to think, and I don't know, I wasn't distracted. And that's what I attribute it to. There was very few distractions on deployment, especially since we did small team stuff, so it wasn't quite like under the big arm of big army, and got to do how we thought was best, and so there's a little more freedom in that. But really, you have a few things to worry about when you're deployed. Are you going to get killed by something you don't see? Rockets, mortars, IEDs, and snipers, which all happened to me while I was there. So it seems like they'll be intense, and it is intense, but it's not a lot of stuff. So am I going to get killed? And what am I going to eat next? And when do I show up to the next mission? That's all you really have to think about.
You're highly focused.
Yeah.
Right. There are not a lot of distractions of television or whatever in your personal life.
I didn't get a cell phone. Some of the guys got cell phones, and that was probably not the best idea. But yeah, no TV, no cell phones, no internet, there was, even at the time, no apps and stuff. Everyone's on social media. There was Facebook, but it was I didn't get on it while I was there.
So that Buddha mind, is that do you think there's a sort of a bit of accepting that fate is here, and what happens will happen? You can only do what you can only control what you can control.
100%. I wish they would teach that before you go, because nobody told me to do that, and some people don't ever get to that point. I think that's pretty dangerous for the person in the moment, but also when they come back. It's not a good place to be, where you don't let go of that white knuckle grip on life, because you're crazy stressed out if you keep that attitude. And at some point, I actually remember the point that happened for me. We were coming back from we did a police training school with some Australians in a place called Numania, and we're coming back from that. I believe we were there for a month, and it's the rainy season in Iraq, or I was in Baghdad for most of it, and the rainy season is the winter. So it's cold and rainy. So I was a gunner in my truck. So I'm in the, poking out the top of this Humvee in the rain, just hating life. And the things that you're supposed to look for, like IEDs were the big deal at that time. It kind of shifted from a certain type of detonation IED to, then it was VBEDs, then it became a different type of IEDs. But either way, the things they tell you to look for are absolutely everywhere. So it's this concrete block that looks out of place. It's a trash pile. Talk about a trash pile. There are trash piles everywhere.
So your head's on a swivel all the time.
Yeah, and if you do your due diligence, you still keep a lookout and do your best, but to not let go of what's going to happen is going to happen will just leave you frazzled. And so I figured that out on that drive. And that was probably a month and a half, 2 months into the deployment that I came to that. And I remember noticing it happening. And I read a lot while I was there too. So maybe it was partially some things I was reading, kind of giving me a perspective on my place in life and my place in the world and that sort of thing. The book I always go back to when people ask me about this is it's called Think on These Things. It's the title by Jiddu Krishnamurti. I don't know if you've ever heard the name before. But he's a Indian philosopher who had some good things to say. It's talking about universal truths and things like that. And I was reading that at the time as well. And maybe it was a, combination of factors. I finally let go. And I remember the relaxation that occurred when I finally let go of that grip. Man, it was great. And that's when the head really opened up and became a great personal growth experience, was after that.
If you think back to the leaders in that time, were you surrounded by leaders who had significant combat experience in those earliest years of the war that were leading you, or did you feel like others around you were experiencing these things for the first time?
My team in particular, everyone's first time. The leaders, so it was kind of weird the way they amalgamated these groups. Like my team chief was, he, I forget the vehicle, but some vehicle rocket, like a vehicle borne rocket system is what he did in Korea. So like never deployed. We had an intel guy, a comm guy. We had 2 infantry dudes, me and somebody else. We had an MP, which is the closest other thing to infantry, who had been to Iraq before. And our comms guy had been to Iraq before. Everyone else was cherries. So yeah, it was interesting and I actually kind of, not that I liked that there was a low level of experience, but because there was a low level of experience with combat, the way that our team worked, at least our team, I don't know if all teams would like this, but whoever had the best stuff to say when stuff was going on got listened to. And I was an E6 at the time, and that was the lowest rank in the team. There were a few E6s on the team, but we were the lowest ranking guys in the team. But when things were like popping off, I have a pretty, found out there actually, a pretty good ability to keep a clear head when things are crazy. I can think, I don't spaz out. And so like a lot of times I was directing the team and giving instructions, but I was the lowest ranking down the team. So that worked out well, that it wasn't a hard rank structure, top down structure that we used, because that would have been not great. So that helped out too.
Did you, when you came back from that tour, was that the end of your reserve service? Or
it was, yeah, I was just over 8 years total when I came back. And so, I probably would have stayed in, because I had a good time. And it's funny, when I was in active duty, maybe so we would talk shit about the reservists and National Guards. Everyone in the military talks shit about whoever else is not in their unit. And it was fun, man. The reserves are fun though. And so I kind of got it after I was there for a while. In the beginning, I'm like, oh, these people, they got no business with uniform. And then I started to like understand it, and I had a lot of fun. So I would have stayed in, but for whatever reason, when I don't know if they restructured units or what they did, but they transferred me to North Carolina. I'm like, there's no chance I'm driving to North Carolina once a month. Like, get out of here. I'm not doing that. So, and since my contract time was up, I just let it expire.
And so what was in your head about what you might do next? Did you have a plan?
I did. And I had already, I'd already been accepted to chiropractic college, and was set to go before I got deployed. And so I was like kind of angsty about the fact that I got taken out of my plans. I thought I was going to forget everything after relearn all my, science and health knowledge prior to going to chiropractic school. Not the case. I think it was a beneficial piece of my life to go to be deployed before I went in to school. But that's what I did. So I started chiropractic college, I think April. So ETS in December. So a short cluster of months after I got out, I started chiro school, and was off the races. I'm still at chiro now.
And how long was that school?
It's the doctoral program, so it's 3.5 years. Anything else of that level? You did a bachelor's beforehand, but
so put some specificity on you're still in chiro now. Or did you start working with somebody else? Do you have your own practice? How's this going?
So my trajectory went some cover jobs in the beginning, but my first real chiro job, I was in a pretty high-end sports practice for the bulk of my time as a chiropractor, which is really cool. It's a very cool experience. I've been an athlete my whole life, and performance has been like my drive for as long as I can remember. And so I fit right into a sports practice. We had a very interesting and unique set of clientele. It was a primarily NFL based practice. Second biggest sport was the Major League Baseball. Then we had a smattering of other sports. I treated at least the ones that trained in Florida, the U.S. women's sprint team. So a bunch of Olympians. It was super cool. And another thing I liked about it, especially the football players, when you're a high-end athlete, there's mechanics that are going on, and there's specifics that go along with that sport. But with football, you get hit too. So it was very like mental gymnastics to figure out how best to keep these guys going. I saw a lot of guys off season. So I had guys from like 12 different teams that would come down to be treated in the off season. But during season, there were a few guys that would have us fly out and go to wherever they were. But that was uncommon. So I mainly treated the Bucks players, and it's funny when you're in season, it's a controlled slide down. You're supposed to be at peak physical condition right as the season starts, and then you're getting your ass kicked for the whole season and hoping you just keep the most you can throughout the season. Yeah. So in the practice, I had to be maximally effective. We used a lot of regenerative therapies in the practice too, which was a differentiator from other practices, because tissue healing rates are one of those things that is a limiting factor when you're getting smashed on one week and you got to play the next week. How fast can you heal? It's one of the factors. And so I used a bunch of stuff between hyperbaric chambers and class 4 lasers and stuff like that to accelerate healing. So it was a good learning experience for me. It like really suited what I'm into and what I think is important with health. So it wasn't just performance. It's kind of funny. People love to think of when you think of health, did you think of diet and exercise? Is that like the first thing that pops into your head?
For me?
Yeah.
Yes. I wasn't sure you were
Yeah.
asking the question. I was thinking to myself, for the people that can't see you as they're listening, you're the model of fitness. I could just tell, and I'm only seeing from the shoulders up.
And that is what people think. They think health. They think diet and exercise. And while those are huge factors, your mindset. So things about your attitudes about various things in your life. There's physiological effects that can happen from your mentation, the things you think about, and your emotions have physiological downstream effects. And so I would address those things with these people as well. And I still do it now with my clients now, even though I'm not doing a sports practice currently. But anyway, it was a fun experience. I got to really hone my game too, because I was like in the trenches trying to keep these guys in the game. And so I just had to make sure I rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
And so I really
Very
enjoyed
cool.
that piece of it. Yeah.
So how long have you been in practice since then now? And is this an independent practice, or are you partnered with somebody?
So right now I'm independent. I teach at a chiropractic college now also. So that's my full-time job. So currently it's a concierge style practice. I treat people at their houses, and I actually really like it. It's I didn't know if I was going to, but I do. I get to really address all aspects of the person's life that need to be addressed, and it's not just them at their house, but I also changed the way that I bill too. Before it was all like a la carte stuff, and now I just charge by the hour, and the things that are necessary I do, whether it's physical or I'm talking to about lifestyle factors, emotional things, whatever the case may be, and that's the practice now.
Flashback to your time in Iraq.
Mhm.
Could you have imagined you'd be doing what you're doing today?
Yeah. For whatever reason, my whole life, people have asked me for advice on health related stuff. And funny, if it used to be a lot of like relationship based stuff about that, but people have always asked me for advice on health related stuff. And
It's
so
a family show here, Dan.
and so I've I've really enjoyed that. I really like, because I love health stuff. If you um, optimizing the human form and the human experience, it just gets me jazzed. So for people to recognize that and value it enough to ask me, I like it. So this is the perfect kind of practice for me, actually.
I'm going to bring it home with the final question that I ask everybody, and I know I'm just throwing one straight down the middle to you. Talk about balance in your life.
Okay. I think balance is never achieved. I think balance is um, the average of extremes. So if you just stay middle of the road for your life, you don't achieve anything. You don't. There's no drive. But if you, I've almost used just a weak cliche of work hard, play hard, but work hard, recover hard, I think is a better take on that example of extremes. If you have a goal in your life, you go when you're working, you go at it hard. So you stay focused um, and try and win, and then you take the time off and actually recover. And recovery is really where growth happens. And so whether it's mental and you're trying to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve and you're trying to recover mentally, great. But if it's physical, all of your gains happen. The gains with the Z that everyone loves. That happens in the recovery. It doesn't happen during the workouts. So I think balance in my life is that when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm with my wife, I'm with my wife, and we're being present with each other. When I'm playing with my dogs, I'm present with my dogs. I'm being in whatever you're doing, and not being so driven that you lose the enjoyment piece.
I'm just going to share, because when you said recover hard, the image that came to mind was, yeah, I can sit around the pool with a drink in my hand with the best of them, but that's probably not what you mean by just completely unplugging. Yeah,
No,
I get it.
When you say unplugging, like these days with technology, like it's really hard to unplug. And my trip to Nicaragua this past week was a great example of that. I don't have a international data plan, so I was off the cell phone. It was awesome. But yeah, understanding what recovery means, and it's mental recovery, there's physical recovery. So like your nutrition, the way that it's doing self-care to yourself, whether you go get a massage, you foam roll, or whatever you choose to use as your recovery vehicles, just make sure you do them and don't let them fall out of your life. When you're in high school or whatever, if you were an athlete at any point, when you're an athlete, it was part of the training. Like you had to do these recovery things so that you can keep training. And it seems like adulting, I feel like adulting is really just stopping doing the stuff that's fun and good for yourself. So I don't think being an adult has to suck as much as it does for most people. You just got to keep the joy in your life and yeah, keep doing fun stuff.
Dad Cooper, what a great interview. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Well, I appreciate it.